All right, let's talk about something you use every single second of your life, but you probably never even think about it. We're going to go on a little high-voltage investigation, become cable detectives, if you will. We're going to uncover the secret work that stops those huge, catastrophic power failures before they even get a chance to start. I mean, just think about it for a second. What happens when the power goes out? The lights go dark, right? Your Wi-Fi is gone. And then there's that sudden, kind of eerie silence, you know? A power outage, it's so much more than just an inconvenience. It's really the first domino in a chain reaction that can bring our entire modern world to a grinding halt. I'm not exaggerating when I say everything runs on electricity. Think about it. Traffic lights, the entire transportation grid, hospitals, all that life-saving medical gear, even the refrigerators that keep our food from going bad, our phones, the internet, the entire financial system, all of it. Every single piece depends on this invisible, constant river of power. And what does that whole system run on? This, a massive, hidden network of high-voltage cables. You can really think of them like the arteries of our civilization. And just like arteries in your body, if you get one tiny, hidden flaw in one of these, well, that's a ticking time bomb just waiting to go off. So, here's the game plan for our little detective story. First, we're going to take a closer look at these unseen arteries of the grid. Then we'll get into the detective's toolkit, a tale of two very different tests. And finally, we'll see how it all comes together to, keep the lights on for all of us.
Okay, so this brings us to the big problem, the real challenge. How in the world do you find a single, tiny, microscopic defect, a single point of failure that could be buried anywhere in thousands of miles of cable? I mean, you can't just go dig it all up and take a look, right? You've got to be way smarter about it.
And that, right there, is where cable testing comes into play. That's the official name for this detective work. It's basically a whole bunch of really sophisticated techniques that let us check a cable's health and even try to predict its future. And the whole point is to stop those in-service failures, which is just the fancy engineering term for what we all call a blackout.
All right, let's open up the detective's toolkit. Now, it's not just one single thing. It's really two totally different ways of thinking, two different philosophies for finding those hidden flaws. It really boils down to a choice. Do you ask, is this thing strong enough? Or do you ask, just how healthy is it?
Let's stick with a medical analogy here, because it works perfectly. The first approach, the stress test, well, that's like putting a patient on a treadmill. You're just trying to see if their heart can take the strain. It's a simple pass or fail. But the second approach, the health checkup, that's way more like getting an EKG or some blood work done. You're not trying to break the system, you're just gathering a ton of detailed data about its health.
So let's dig into that first method, the stress test. You can think of this as the aggressive interrogation part of our investigation. We're going to intentionally push this cable to its limits and just see if it cracks under the pressure.
And the logic here is pretty straightforward, almost brute force. You blast the cable with a voltage that's way, way higher than what it would normally see. And why would you do that? Well, because if there's a really bad flaw hiding in there, you want it to fail right here, right now during your controlled test, not in the middle of a thunderstorm when everyone needs their power. You find the weak link by forcing it to break, but you do it on your terms. But, okay, this brings up a massive engineering problem. These cables already carry a huge amount of power, so how on earth do you generate an even higher voltage for a test, with equipment that you can actually haul out to a job site? That's the real trick. And this is the genius solution. On the left, you see the old way of doing things, a massive, traditional test unit. I mean, look at that thing. It's gigantic, super heavy, totally impractical for most jobs. But on the right, that's the game changer. It's a very low frequency, or VLF unit. By dropping the AC frequency way down, engineers figured out they needed a lot less power for the test, and that meant they could shrink the gear from the size of a truck down to something you can actually carry. Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so that's the stress test. Now let's switch gears to the second approach, which gives us a much more complete picture. We're moving away from that brute force interrogation and getting more into a subtle, almost forensic investigation. This is the health checkup, where we're basically listening for tiny clues about the cable's real condition.
First up in this toolkit is something called the tan delta test. The best way to think about it is like a doctor just listening to your overall breathing. It's not going to pinpoint one specific little problem, but what it does give you is this amazing global condition assessment. It's a perfect summary of the entire cable's health all the way from one end to the other just by measuring these teeny tiny changes in its electrical properties.
So you get all this data. Now what? Well, it gets translated into this really simple color-coded chart. Super easy to understand. Based on what they find, a cable gets a grade. No action required, you're good to go. Further study advised, maybe we should keep an eye on this one. Or the one that makes everyone sit up and pay attention. Action required. It's a crystal clear, data-backed way to figure out which problems you need to jump on first. But what happens if you need to know the exact spot where the problem is? For that, you bring in the big guns, partial discharge testing, or PD for short. So if tan delta was like listening to the patient's breathing, PD testing is like using a super-sensitive, high-tech stethoscope to hear these tiny little crackles deep inside the cable's insulation. These are basically microscopic sparks, and they're the dead giveaway that a defect is there and it's getting worse.
Yeah, I know. This graph looks crazy complicated. But what it shows is nothing short of revolutionary. Every one of those little spikes and patterns lets an engineer literally see inside the cable. They can pinpoint not just that there's a problem, but precisely where it is along the cable and just how bad it is. This is the real deal, folks. True forensic-level detective work.
So, to recap, we've got two really powerful but really different approaches. You've got the brute force pass/fail stress test on one hand and the super detailed diagnostic health checkup on the other. The last piece of this puzzle, the thing that really cracks the case, is how today's cable detectives figured out how to combine them.
And it all came down to asking a really simple but totally brilliant question. Why choose? Why does it have to be one or the other? The smartest, most advanced approach out there today doesn't pick a side. Nope, it combines the absolute best of both worlds.
And here's how they do it. It's called a monitored withstand test. So the technicians start applying that high stress test voltage, but they do it in steps, ramping it up slowly. And this is the magic part. While they're doing that, they're also running the diagnostic tools, the TD and the PD, at the exact same time, watching the results in real time. It's truly the best of all worlds. You still get that clear pass-fail answer from the stress test, but if the diagnostic data suddenly screams, hey, this thing is about to blow, they can stop the test immediately. They prevent any damage, but they've still gathered all that crucial forensic evidence. It's just perfect. So look, the next time you flip a light switch, and of course the light just comes on, take a second and remember this stuff. It's not magic that makes that happen. It's this. It's incredibly advanced equipment being used by highly skilled technicians. These are the cable detectives. They're out there every single day doing this invisible, high-stakes work just to make sure the power grid we all take for granted stays reliable. Really, the big takeaway is that our whole modern life is built on top of countless systems just like this one. They're super complex, they're absolutely critical, and they're almost completely hidden from our view. They're all just quietly working in the background to stop disasters that we never even knew were a threat in the first place. It kind of makes you wonder, right? What other invisible systems are out there silently protecting us and keeping our world running every single day?